Excellent. Well, Amy, welcome. It's great to have you live on the Facebook page here. Hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Quesada. Thank you so much for joining us live on the Nonprofit Partnerships Facebook page. We want to welcome you to yet another great interview slash conversation that we title Our Stories, Our Time. And I can't wait to introduce our guest today. In this series, we interview nonprofit leaders to understand how organizations are navigating through current times. We love to hear from them about, the successes they're having, their breakthroughs, the learning moments from various challenges. And before I introduce our guest today, the Nonprofit Partnership wishes to thank the Port of Long Beach for their generous support of this series. If you are watching us live on Facebook, please engage with us, leave a comment, leave a question, say hello to our special guest today. With that, I will introduce Amy Erikson, Executive Director of Angels Gate Cultural Center. Amy, welcome. It's great to have you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Carolina. It's nice to be with you today.
Thank you so much. Amy, you do a lot of work with the Nonprofit Partnership. We know quite a bit about you, your commitment to the sector, your commitment to the community, and your commitment to others. I think a lot of what you do is really in service to others as well. So with that, tell us more about you. I think there's quite a few folks who would love to know more about Amy Erikson. So share with us a little bit more about your background and history.
Well, thank you for sharing those things. I think community is probably most important in my life, is making sure that we're a part of our community, that we're uplifting our community. And I think the nonprofit industry as a whole, but especially the arts nonprofits in our community, are so important. So it's been an honor to work with TMP and working with other nonprofits, and that's kind of where I began too. I have been in arts management, honestly, since high school. I was asked on a board when I was in high school, and learned about that side of the world, and helped to run a youth symphony that I was a part of back then, and just knew that was something that was important in my life. Then I went off to work at a place where I had spent many summers in a camp as a musician. And so I worked at Idlewild Arts for 12 years after that time as a camper. And I learned so many things. I met so many people that showed me what the arts community can look like, and what having a job that is maybe what we don't expect as artists growing up, right? So we expect that we might become the next Mark Bradford, or we might become the next amazing musician. But what we don't realize is it takes so much to create that community and to have those arts in our community, that maybe we were better suited not to be the principal cellist, for me, of the Long Beach Symphony, but maybe be best suited to take care of or manage an organization like that, or an artist like that. And so I really started seeing that in college, and realizing that I don't need to be playing in the orchestra, or as my friends were doing, dancing in the ballet. But I think what I wanted to do was, I wanted to make sure that everybody got access to those things. And so and that work really started up at Idlewild Arts. Being able to see 400 or 500 students from all over the world be there together. It has every arts discipline in the rotation. So as a musician, I would get to go see a theater production that maybe I would never have had time for, or an artist, a visual artist, might get a chance to go see a dance performance, things that were in the arts, but maybe we don't get a chance to see all of the arts. Yeah. And that's when I realized about access. Like, access is really important. And I had some amazing bosses up there, and I really just found that they were doing it. They were like artist teachers, but they were also running programs, and they were also making sure that they were doing arts advocacy in the community, which is a huge piece of the puzzle of nonprofits, right? sometimes when we fall upon a problem in a nonprofit, it's really just about advocacy. How are we helping to advocate for that issue in the industry, either our own sector or in the whole industry of nonprofits, to make sure it's not a problem for us or anyone else. So I learned a lot of great things up there, and in my time with a couple other arts organizations over the years. And about 12 years ago, I was trying to get a hold of one of my great bosses from Idlewild, and I would see her like a couple times a year, and it had been like we'd known each other at that point maybe 10 years. And so I hadn't seen her for a while. So I just called her up and I was like, hey, why aren't you, answering my phone calls? She was like, finally got a hold of me and was like, I am too busy. I have this new job. And I've been with this organization for a long time, but they got a big grant and now I'm having to do all this stuff that it was not her wheelhouse. She and I worked together at Idlewild, and I did the admin side of it. I love that stuff. And she was the creative side of it. And she was amazing with teaching artists how to be the best teachers to students, and really uplifting that every person can do art. So not making it for the third grader, but making it for the artist. And she was like, God, I wish you could be here and like do the admin stuff for me. And I was like, at that point in my life, we were running our own business, and my partner and I was like, I think I could do this like a couple days a week and have steady income coming in. And so I said, yeah, let me know. Maybe I can come help you. And about 6 months later, I was there at Angels Gate as the assistant to the arts director of arts education. And she's been a very important influence in my life. She's the only boss I've ever called boss. But then she spent the next couple years introducing me to who is in arts education that's doing really community work. And so I got to Angels Gate 12 years ago, but I became the director of arts education about a year later, as she had to step out to take care of her own family. She stayed involved, and I got to be her boss as an artist teacher there. So I think that's all to say, like, I am who I am because of the community. And so why wouldn't I always want to be giving to that community?
And I have to say, I mean, what I know about you, and sorry to interrupt you, but I mean,
No.
everything you just described, and boy, there's a lot to unpack about your story. I want to ask more. You embody all of that. You get it. You get what it means to be truly in relationship with others, in relationship to a network. So even your story about, reconnecting with folks, just saying hello, just kind of trying to, again, find those commonalities of reconnection, has led to this, so that's wonderful. And the other thing too, Amy, is just your exposure to, I think, a much wider systems beyond yourself. You're a musician by heart. By the way, do you still play?
I do actually. I mean, this is another thing to unpack, but I would say that I don't play cello very much anymore.
Okay.
Because as we all know, as artists, if you don't practice something, you're not very good at it. And so when you get to a place where you're really good at something and then you have to like put that on hold for a while, I think there's some shame and blame in that, trying to come back to it. And so a few years ago, I was like, okay, I need to do music, but how can I do it without that? And so I got a drum set, and I have been learning how to play. It's like one of a few instruments. I was a music educator for a lot in the middle there. And so I learned a lot of instruments. I had amazing music teachers growing up that taught me many of them, but I never learned how to play drums, the set. And so it's been really fun because it's totally creative. And if I suck at it, it's okay because I've never done it before. So yeah, for sure. I do play a little bit, but just not the things that everybody thinks I do.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, you're still tapped into, obviously, that creativity, that artist in you is still very much a part of who you are, and how, again, I think folks know about you and know you. So here you are now, you're the executive director of Angels Gate. And since your days as was director of education, right? Arts education, things have changed. Quite a few things have changed. So tell us about where Angels Gate is now, you know, and who you're primarily engaging, and what does that relationship with community look like from an organizational perspective?
Well, I think to play off of, the thing that I do as art, I think I've been very lucky to hire an amazing team. We've had lots of changes, right? When I got there as executive director, there were 5 of us. Now we have 10 staff. There was a group of artist teachers of 7 artist teachers. Now we have 10 artist teachers that go into classrooms, and they're on the staff now versus, private, being private contractors with us. And so I just tried to keep thinking about community every time we were making those hiring choices. So I'm very lucky that I have a team who believes in community, and a team that are entrepreneurial and artists and want to do their own art too, because then everybody's tapped into all those things. And that has allowed us to grow kind of exponentially over the last 7 years. Angels Gate so we are just finishing our 40th anniversary year in March. So Angels Gate has been around for 40 years, and really for the first 20, I would say, was like a one-man shop. There's an executive director who also put up shows in the gallery, who also said, "Hey, I have some artists that want to come be in your classroom. Do you want that?" And then just made space for studios to happen. But I would say in the last 18 years or so, with my predecessors, the last couple of predecessors of executive directors, they really started to formalize things and try and raise more funds and have more programs. So even when we started 7 years ago, when I came into this role, we did about 4 programs a year, 4 events a year. And we had an artist in classrooms program that was in, like I said to you, when they pulled me in 12 years ago, it was in 40 classrooms. So in 6 or 7 years ago, we had grown that to 60 classrooms a year.
Wow.
And then really we had a gallery that had now preparators and a visual arts director and all of those pieces. So we were kind of starting to form this more formalized structure, but growth is not linear, right? And sometimes you can't do all the things you want to do because you don't have the funds or the time or the people. And so we had some changes over that time, and I think have really solidified into this amazing team that now has done the growth over the last few years. So what used to be 40 classrooms 12 years ago, what was 75 or so classrooms 6 years ago, we're now in 190 classrooms. That's just in one part of our arts education. And now, instead of 4 events 12 years ago, we're doing, I think we did 52 events. We're gonna do 52 events in this year. So lots of different things. And with that comes challenges and wins, huge wins. So we're just very lucky to be able to have, I think, a team that has allowed us to weather those ups and downs. And now we're at another growth point. So to be honest, you talked about the pandemic earlier, about these times, and 2020 was going to be our coast year. You have growth, and then you have like a year where you can live in the stuff that you built. And then we were like, what?
Right.
And now every one of those programs had to figure out some virtual component, and we had to literally rethink everything. And it was not the coast year we expected. But it was amazing. It was innovative, and it helped us think through things in different ways and see ourselves in different ways and see our problems, right, too. And so we did not have that year, but so we had this big transitional year, got everything online, and then the next year somehow we grew a little bit, right? And then we came back last year, and we came back really just this year in 2022 with most of our programming. We did not come into the office, into the physical space for until kind of May of 2021, and then still not really doing in classroom stuff for even another 6 or 7 months. So in 2022, we have now seen this, like, everybody has heard about us and people want us for these different things. So we're seeing growth again. So I am really looking forward to coasting year in the next year or two, where we can really like stay where we're at, do the programming we're doing very well, but be able to do that because of the community that we have. So you heard about, like, right? You saw changes from 4 to 50. Obviously, a team of 10 cannot handle running and thinking through 50 events. But what we can do is we can partner with amazing groups to do that. And that's how we have grown kind of this exponential way over the last many years.
Yeah, and I think in another minute or so, I'd really like for you to kind of take a bit of a deeper dive into this whole element of collaboration and, really working in partnership with others to do that work, or to really, kind of expand the impact of work. But I'm curious to know from you, if you had to distill it to a few things, what do you think were those success factors for you that really helped you go from like fully understanding, okay, we're not going to coast this year. It's a whole different situation. Yet, by how you're describing it, it sounds like you really took advantage of the opportunities, even though there were challenges there, but there were opportunities kind of embedded in that. What would you say? Was there a particular mindset? Was it already just sort of the culture of the teamwork that was present at Angels Gate that allowed you to just sort of ride through some of that, just not knowing what was around the corner?
I think working hard was a big part of that first year, right? I think we did more teamwork that year because we needed each other, right? We needed to be close and check in on each other and have conversations that we probably wouldn't have had a year or two before, because we just want to take care of each other in all of the ways, not just in the work. So I think that was a success, because we were lucky that we had had a team that had been together for a year or two. And so we also had a benefit of 4 of my staff lived within 4 blocks of me. So we had a lot of meetings on my front lawn. So I think all of that to say that we had great people, and we were able to use our skills, like writing for relief grants, and for, taking the time to see what people need before we just put out a program. And also we had some program things that were kind of in the wings, so we were able to bring those pieces up. But it was all about staff. I think it was all about a team that could really kind of carry that load through that.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. And I think that anyone listening to this can also perhaps really connect with that, as they probably have experienced something very similar as well. So looking at, who's engaging in the community, in the kinds of arts programs that you're doing, and in the classes, in the events, which are meant to be educational, but of course, there's so much more to these experiences too, right? Tell us more about, who's interacting with Angels Gate.
Like 7 years ago, when I became executive director, a local newspaper guy was like, "Oh, you have a big problem up there. You are so disconnected from everybody because you're at the top of a hill." And we are literally at the end of the county, right? So we're about half a mile from the ocean on the southern end of our community. And it's true, there's no bus that comes right to Angels Gate. There is no walkability, like where people just happen upon Angels Gate. They come to Angels Gate Park to maybe walk their dogs, and we might find them that way, but there's no like generation, like a participant generation right here. And somebody else said to me, "You're like the hidden gem," and I don't want to be a hidden gem. And for some reason, I've like worked at 3 places that we were the hidden gem, and I was like, I want to be the really everybody knows
No more
us gem.
hidden gems, no more.
So we just did a lot of work over the last 10 years, honestly, even before I was executive director, about being involved, And for me, luckily, I had already been the director of arts education, so I had been going to meetings, but San Pedro is a very close-knit town. And either somebody stands up at a meeting and says, I've been here for 4 generations, and let me tell you, or somebody stands up and says, I've only been here for 30 years, and I know I'm a newbie. But you know, those things are true of many communities. And so I just went to meetings, and I sent other staff to meetings, and we just got involved. We just had a meeting today with One San Pedro, which is it's a HUD organized program. They're redoing the Rancho site, housing site down on the water, and they you know, HUD takes forever. So they were going to take 4 years before they even broke ground on anything. And they were like, but we want services to come to these people. So they invited a bunch of people in, and it's turned out to be a group of 25 or 30 that come every other month and have these meetings. And they have helped us to fund a bus for students and families from that community to come up to our art workshop.
Nice.
So, and it's just by being involved and
Right.
not always having to be the one that speaks up the most. And so for 2 or 3 years, we just went, and then, you know, we found our footing in this community, and mostly to other arts organizations, directors help. Like, you know, there's a great community of arts orgs in San Pedro, and many of them invited me or our organization into those kinds of conversations. So many of us work also with we have an arts district right there in San Pedro, and it got state designated 5 years ago. We helped to be a partner in that with many other organizations like the Harbor Waterfront Arts District or Grand Vision. Even our chamber was a part of that, and our Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. So that was great work. Like, great to be able to write a grant with other people and other organizations, but also to get to know them and them to get to know Angels Gate, so that Angels Gate really became part of that fabric, versus just being that place up on the hill that not everybody knows about. So,
Wow, you can write a book titled The Place Up on the Hill. You should.
right.
Or an installation on that. And you
Yeah.
know, without even me asking about it, you're already talking about this element of collaboration. And I so appreciate the way that you're sharing this, because you're not answering it from that perspective. Instead, you're talking about community and both contributing to community, being proactive about it, but also, you know, when someone's knocking on your door to say, look, do you want to be a part of this or help us kind of think through this? It sounds like, I mean, Angels Gate has responded very affirmatively to
Mhm.
those opportunities.
We want to be a part of it. I think you don't get through the hard times, and we're talking mostly about really good times, right? But there are hard moments too, and you can't do that on your own. And often we hear, you know, I do a lot of your TNP 101 classes. So
Yep.
when we talk to people about nonprofits, they have a lot of expectations, but one thing they don't always remember is that you can feel siloed in a nonprofit, especially in a leadership role, just like you can in a for-profit organization. Like, you know, be dealing with staff and dealing with those things, often it feels like, oh, it's all on, you know, there's weight on a person's shoulders, or you're having to deal with things with that you can't communicate to others. I don't feel that way, because I have this group of people, and there's, you know, we've built a cohort of EDs that can meet regularly, and we can share stories and share help, that we can talk about grants and say, everybody should apply for this so we can all get it this year. Right.
Right.
But I think also, I do things a little bit different too. Like, I do talk to my staff about lots of things. We have really become more of a crew than a, you know, just an organizational team. So
Right.
it's been, all of those pieces are a piece of that. But first and foremost, if you're going to ask me what my favorite word is, it's community. And I think we want to talk with other people that feel that same way. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. You know, and as I'm hearing you describe that, I bet there's a lot of folks out there who, executive directors or founders of organizations, um, who are feeling, you know, like they are somewhat disconnected, like truly the environment that they're they're working in, they're functioning in, is a very competitive environment, one where you really have to look out for yourself. But I think it seems like folks always have somewhat of an inkling to still connect, right? To still kind of figure out, if only there was better communication amongst more of us, or if only there was a little bit more, collaboration or friendship. So, I mean, your examples really highlight the fact that it takes, even if it's an action on a smaller scale, because I love your example about just connecting across lines and saying, hey, you're an executive director, I'm one too, so and so across the way is, let's just meet, let's just kind of connect over coffee, and great things have come out of that.
Really great things. Um, I think we think that old saying, like rising tides raise all ships, like, that's how we can do this work together. Like, we've done a lot of arts education advocacy, and there are just on one LAUSD bench for arts education, there are over 40 partners that do arts education either in the classroom or after school. And if when we got into those rooms, people even said, people that are now my colleagues and I really adore, like, just there is the mindset still of, well, I can't tell you how much money we put into this program for LAUSD because I don't want you to know what I'm getting, because then you'll come and take it. And that is a prevalent piece of the puzzle. And the more we have those conversations, the next step is the 14 of those 40 orgs that did tell us, and we found out there was like $4.5 million that those just 14 orgs put in to pay for arts education in LA Unified. Well, think of the amount of, advocacy we can do just from a standpoint of knowing that we are helping this community and we want to be a part of the solutions of that community. So I think that people are starting to see that. I think nonprofits are starting to see that, because yes, we are still all fighting for the smaller and smaller pieces of a puzzle,
Right.
of a pie, but we can do it together. So and when we stand together, and we can then maybe affect change in even a more important way. So it's fun to see that and be a part of that. And I think each of our team members, especially our directors, are seeing that out in the world in ways. And so when work gets hard, it's a reminder that advocacy is really, really important.
Yes.
And the work that we do together doesn't need to, I think we've all had that conversation, right? Like, you're talking to another ED and you're like, hey, did you get that grant? Yeah, I got that grant. Did you get a lot, or did you get a little? Right?
Like you're tiptoeing around.
You're like tiptoeing around, and I am not that person. I just go like, hey, this is what happened. What about you? Is it great? That's great. Like, and so I think, Angels Gate really just wants to be a strong force in helping the community to see access to arts as the important piece that it is.
Yeah. And I think that what we're learning about you, Amy, by way of this interview, of course, people who have worked with you, people who are your friends and your colleagues know this about you already, but is the fact that, you're also, I think, modeling a different mindset and a different approach to this work, that at the end of the day, the more seeds of trust building you're planting in different spheres, whether it could be with your own team members or outside of your organization or even outside of your immediate sector, that it serves as a tool, not just for individual organizational leaders, because again, then you kind of feel like you're not at it alone,
right?
But also for the greater good. And I love also this theme that you keep bringing up, even in your story as a youngster, musician, kind of learning about arts programming and arts organizations, that there is advocacy to do, right? And what an important role that plays. So, time really flies by when you're having a lot of fun. And this always happens to me because I love talking to different folks in the community. But as we close, share with us What's on the horizon for Angels Gate? What do you want folks to know about the Cultural Center?
We have seen through the pandemic how important arts are to us. I think everybody that, pushed their way through those 2 really hard years and still went to reading, went to watching movies, went to playing an instrument, went to doing some kind of dance or a walk or a something, and went and looked at murals and went and looked at art. And so we know the power of art. So we at Angels Gate Angels Gate wants to be a part of that power and make sure that we are advocating and just like our mission says, right, we're making space for artists. And I think so many people think of space as our studios, and I only have 50 studios. Like we can't make enough space for all the artists, but making space is really truly a bigger idea of making sure that there's room for them to show work. So I think you're going to see a big call out here in the next few months for new curatorial projects at Angels Gate. We have that coming up, and finding space for artists to do large public art. We're working with West Harbor and the new development down in San Pedro to help them put out a call that so many artists will be able to apply for, and how to prioritize local artists, San Pedro, Harbor region, Wilmington, those kinds of artists. So being in the community in those ways, along with the making space for everyone to come and be an artist. So we have art workshops 2 or 3 times a month now, and that are free and open to the public. And I told you about that bus thing. We actually have a family that comes every month to our workshops. They take 2 buses and they walk like 2 really big blocks up a hill. And so we want to be more accessible to those kinds of things. So supporting those kinds of programs with things that will help people be able to access this and help the community access this is going to be, it's becoming, I think, our goal as we're thinking about who we're with, and as we're talking as a team about where we want to go in the next couple of years.
Great. So best way to follow Angels Gate, is it social media, Facebook?
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I would recommend get on Insta and follow Angels Gate there. We have an amazing team that handles all of our social media. So Facebook and Insta. We have an AGCC gallery on Instagram as well. So follow us in those kinds of ways. We're doing a huge revamp on our website. So I would say in February, jump on our website and see who we are more. But here's your last piece. Come to campus next Saturday, November 19th from 12 to 4. We're having Open Studios Day. It's the way to see all of the things that we do. All the studios will be open. There will be events throughout the day and workshops. And it's just a great chance to kind of highlight what Angels Gate does best, which is art.
That's wonderful. And so that must be up on your website already, right? Can you share your website really quickly?
Sure, of course. It's angelsgateart.org. angelsgateart.org, and it's very easy to find us. Just look up Angels Gate Cultural Center on any Google and you will find us.
Excellent. Amy, it's always a pleasure, but thank you so much. Really appreciate having spent this time with you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
so much.
everybody. Please follow Angels Gate. Connect with Amy when you can.